Let's take DeFi lending borrowing markets. Credit is accessed with over-collateralized assets as we know it today, right? If do you foresee a situation where we've got a Mocha ID or any such form, which not just is your reputation in a social context in the metaverse, but also your sort of a credit score of sorts. With that, could you borrow in an on-chain market with collateral which is far lower than what we are doing right now, for example?
100%. So the opening and how do you create? So we care about mass adoption, right? So how do you create this mass adoption? You have to include people into the ecosystem. You don't include people into the financial ecosystem by asking them to over-collateralize, right? You're taking a chance on them, right? You're saying, okay, here's a loan or here's a credit for you. Here's a credit card, right? That you can spend because I think you're good for it to pay back over a certain period of time. I sometimes give this example about employment. I imagine if you go and work for a company and you say, oh, great. So you can join here, but I need you to put up at least 1 year of your salary as collateral so I can, make sure that you're productive, right? Because, I don't have a reputation. I don't know who you are, right? And, if you did that, I'm sure we'd hire that person because at least you give it a chance, right? Or at least most people will. But the problem is that it doesn't work this way, right? So what you do is you invest it in your reputation by going to college or by doing other things to say, hey, I have the skill, so take a chance. But how many people hire someone on that chance and it works out? It doesn't always work out, but it's part of that process, right? It's part of that evolution and part of that design, right? Now, the thing that we do on Mocha token a lot is these airdrops, right? These airdrops essentially, from our vantage point, is the equivalent of essentially providing unsecured credit. Now, it's not to say that it's unsecured credit because we want it back. It's just to say that, hey, you have a good score and we'll give you the tokens because we think you'll do good things with it. That is already the first generation of that approach. It's to say, I'm paying you because I hope you will do good things. And if you do bad things with them, eventually we won't give you any more, right? Because we don't think that you're basically a good actor, right? That's an equivalent version of essentially on-chain credit. You can now advance that further into essentially creating unsecured credit. And unsecured credit is a multi-trillion-dollar market. And if we could actually create unsecured credit on-chain, then we could open that market much, much larger and actually creates more liquidity and more growth and more opportunities because there's no need to over-collateralize. And also, if you over-collateralize, you actually make it harder for people to join the ecosystem because you just don't have the money to do so, right? Right. It's so I think it's all related towards that. And eventually, once you have a society where everyone has a reasonable trust score of some sort that they can measure, they can choose to not share it, right? Up to them. Then we'll have not only more sort of unsecured credit as a whole, which is more inclusive, we're also going to have a lot more trade and transactions because I have more trust, right? If I can trust you, I can do it much more easily as opposed to needing all these, like how much friction do we have because we have to KYC 5 times over, right? And have to sort of do verification checks 10 times over, right? As opposed to, okay, actually, the ID can solve for a lot of that. And so you can now transact much faster. It's all about removing friction and making it more seamless.